Well, you can go ahead and begin if you want, and I'll
Yeah, let's start.
keep your
And I'll slowly, when more people come, I'll be like,
Okay.
but hi everyone, thanks for being here. Session today. We have Mr. Heymann here with us, and he's going to spend some time speaking with you all. Please leave yourself on mute unless you are asked to speak. But I think we all love video. It's great to see everyone's faces. And yes, let's begin. So Mr. Jon Heymann has a professional background spanning 35 years that ranges from private ministry to public penitentiaries to his present position as CEO of Elevate Jacksonville. For the previous 5 years, Jon was the CEO of the Jacksonville Children's Commission, which administered $38 of children's services through great organizations like Big Brother, Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, Communities in Schools, where Jon served as CEO for 50 years. He holds a master's degree in education from the University of Florida and has completed graduate work both in psychology at Rhode Island College and doctoral work at the University of North Florida. Clemson University awarded their top national award, the Crystal Award, for his work in dropout prevention, and Stanford University named Jon Heymann a transformational leader. Mr. Heymann is a national board member of Foundations, Inc., based in Philadelphia, a board member of University of Florida's Lastinger Center for Education, Florida State Advisory Board member of Children's Campaign, and has served on Northeast Florida Council on Alcohol and Drug Abuse, as well as board president of United Way's agency directors. He's a member of the National Dropout Prevention Network, Florida Chamber of Commerce President's Council, and the Florida Association of Nonprofit Organizations. He has been a keynote speaker in numerous national conventions, men's retreats, youth conferences, schools, and more. He and his wife Cheryl live in Jacksonville in Mandarin and have 3 grown children. He believes that our grandest hour has yet to be lived, and our greatest accomplishments have yet to be achieved by those who dare to be great. So with that, I pass the mic to you.
Well, thank you.
Enjoy.
I have no microphone to grab. In this new reality, this is a weird way to speak to a group. The last time I spoke to the teaching staff, I believe, was probably 3 years ago, perhaps 4 years ago. Much smaller group then. You guys have really grown. Your reputation has grown, and I am thoroughly impressed. So when I was asked if I'd be willing to speak to some of the finest teachers in the city of Jacksonville, perhaps the whole state of Florida, I said, absolutely, I'd love this. You guys really do have a wonderful reputation, and clearly the folks I'm speaking to are the ones who make that reputation happen. And you know I'm serious when I say that, because without you teachers, River City Science Academy does not exist. No school exists without its teachers. It's not the administration that creates the magic between the teachers and the students. So thank you for that introduction. It sounds like something, that was long. I said you could shorten it. You didn't have to read all that, but thanks. It kind of makes a point, I guess. I hadn't written this down, but I thought sometimes people are enamored with titles and degrees and labels. And I think to myself sometimes, you know, I'm seasoned enough to know that labels do not replace legacy. And titles do not replace testimony. I mean, I don't know when the last time you went to a title dinner, you never did, but you've gone to a testimonial dinner. And degrees do not replace temperature. I'll let that one sink in for a second. Degrees behind your name does not replace temperature inside of your heart. So I hope I'm speaking to people who enjoy more to make an emphasis on your legacy, your testimony, and the degrees, the temperature inside your heart. Just to get to know you a little bit better, because that was a long introduction on me, how many of you have your own children? I have 3. Raise your hand so I can see your hands. Okay, I'm going to flip through the whole group of you. It's a lot of you. Okay, some of you are not on by video, so I can't see, but I'm going to assume a great majority of you have children of your own. How many of you love those kids? Raise your hand. better be the same people. I'm taking pictures. No, actually, this is being recorded from what I understand. You do love your kids. How many of you, you don't have to raise your hand, because I'm going to assume if you went into this high calling as a teacher, how many of you love the kids, the students? By the way, if there's anybody on here that's offended by me using the term kid, these kids are not goats. I'm sorry, I'm probably going to do it. I've used the term kids for a long, long time. I'll try to transfer it to children. It's more educational. But anyhow, how many of you love the children you're working with? You don't have to raise your hand. I'm going to guess that you have. And if you haven't, I hope by the end of this presentation, you will select a different occupation for both yourself and for the sake of the children that are in your classroom. Because you have to love these kids to go through some of the days that you have to go through. I know, I am married to a public school teacher, and I see it every day, every night, how much she anguishes over her children. And sometimes it's not about their reading levels. It's about their life and what's going on in their life. Another quick question, and I know already the answer, so you probably do as soon as I ask it. How many of you know what color socks I'm wearing? You don't. You don't know what color socks I'm wearing. So if I told you that they were green striped, and they are, I was actually making an earlier presentation where it was a live one, so I was able to show them the color of my socks, and somebody said, I don't want the image of your leg in my mind for the rest of the day. But you don't know the color of my socks. They're green striped. They're wild colored. I wear a lot of wild colors almost every day. And the reason I do is to make a point that now that you know the color of my socks, will it make any difference in your life? No, it's not going to make it. There are things in life, ladies and gentlemen, that once you know them, they make no difference in your life. And yet we sometimes spend an awful lot of time discovering knowledge that makes no difference in our lives. Then there are other things that don't know that if we knew, they would make a big difference in our lives. So I'm hoping that the time that we share today, and I believe I have an hour, that the time that we share today, I might reveal things that you don't know. I might not. Some of you may know everything I'm going to say, and if that's the case, then use this as a stamp of approval that what you are doing, in my mind at least, is a fantastic job, career, and calling. If you do happen to learn a few things, I hope it makes a difference in your life. Abraham Lincoln once said, it is not what we think of ourselves of who we are, it's how we think is who we are. And so I'm hoping that your thinking might be challenged and changed a little bit today. Yes, I was the head of the Jacksonville Children's Commission. I hope I'm not choppy in my, are you hearing everything I'm saying, by the way? Because when Alex was speaking, it was choppy to me. I don't know if it was to you, but a couple times it chopped out. And one of them was, I ran a $38 million operation. All I heard was $38. It's a little bigger than that. And then now have just started a brand new nonprofit called Elevate Jacksonville, in no competition with any public or private school. In fact, I hope sometime you guys will actually think about bringing Elevate to your school. It's really, really dynamic. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. When you joined the teaching profession, can you remember that first year? Can you remember the first day? How nervous you were? Perhaps some of you are in your first year, so it's really recent memory. But I remember, because I was a teacher, I remember the first time I got involved in youth work in general. I was a youth pastor. I was really nervous, but I had, listen careful, I had a new believer fever in me that was unshakable. I was going to change the world. Now, this is what's happened to me since then, because I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I know some of you find that surprising. I'm not in my 20s anymore. I'm not in my 30s. I used to have a bulky bunch of black hair, and I used to ride a motorcycle. In fact, I've ridden motorcycles all my life. But I will tell you this, I have not lost my new believer fever for this kind of work. I have not lost it. Have I changed the world? Probably not. Have I changed the world for a lot of students? Yes. Have I changed the world for a lot of young people? Yes. But you're not probably going to see a statue of me anywhere, and I'm fine with that. I love my life. I have loved it, and I still do. And I'm hoping for those of you who have been doing this work for a long time, that you have not lost your new believer fever for this high calling as well. And I'm going to continue using the term high calling. It's not just a career. It really is a calling. And your paycheck proves that to you every time you get paid, because it's not usually all that big. When you, in fact, let's do this before we go back to an exercise, because I'm going to ask you how many years you've been involved, and I'm going to try to flip through all the screens to see the years all of you have been involved in this line of work. But before we do that, I want you to define leadership for me. Define leadership. If you have something to write with or write on, because you're going to do some more writing after this. Don't do it right now. On the count of three, I'm going to ask you all to hold your breath. Did you hear that? I'm going to ask you all to hold your breath. And I'm going to give about a minute, because most people can't hold their breath for more than a minute. Define leadership within that period of time. Okay? You ready? On the count of three, we're all going to hold our breath. And this is the honor system. Once you cannot hold your breath, stop defining leadership. Count of three, hold breath, define leadership. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead, write. Write down your definition of leadership. As soon as you cannot hold your breath anymore, stop writing. And if you have finished defining, just look up so I can see your face. Then I know most people are done. If I was in a big room, this would be a contest. We'd see how long somebody could hold their breath. But I can't do that with Zoom. Okay, it looks like almost maybe I missed somebody, but it looks like everybody has finished holding their breath. Perhaps not finished your definition of leadership, but finished holding your breath. Go back and look at those words. Go back to your definition. I'm not going to ask anybody to read it. Go back and look at your definition of leadership and circle the important words. There should be 2 or 3 or 4. If there are no important words, you didn't define leadership. But I bet you there are. There's probably 1, 2, 3, or 4 words there. Just circle them. Okay, have you done that? It looks like everybody has done that. When I ask you to respond verbally, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and then mute yourself as soon as you've responded, okay? Because we have so many people on mute on Zoom, which is very different than a live presentation, I'm going to ask you to do something. You have to respond, and I'm not going to probably see it because there's 6 screens in front of me, and I'm probably not going to see you, but I will hear you. And then mute yourself again so there's not a lot of voices competing against each other. Name one of the important words that you listed. One important, unmute, say it, and then mute.
Connected.
Organization.
Inspiring.
Inspiring. Compassion.
Well-rounded.
Understanding.
Humble.
Ooh, that's a good one, humble, yeah. Not that the others weren't good. I never heard somebody say humble. That's a good one. Anyone else? Respect. Compelling. Excellent. I'm writing as much of them as I can catch on my Zoom. Please mute yourself again. Thank you so much. Now, let's go back to the question of how long have you been doing this line of work? So how many do I have that has 1 year experience at River City Science Academy? This is your first year, or maybe you completed last year. I'll still consider that 1 year. I see one hand. Please keep your hand up so I can see, because I got to flip through the screens. It's only a few of you. Okay, that's cool. So some of you are brand new teachers here. How many of you have been teaching 5 years or less? Not 5 years or more, 5 years or less. Okay, it's a lot more hands are going up. Okay. And keep them up just so I can see how many. Thanks, I appreciate that. Okay, good, thank you. All right, 10 years or less. That means those who raised 5 years, put your hands back up. 10 years or less teaching. Okay, it doesn't have to be at River City. It could be teaching anywhere. Okay, I see it. Now I'm going to jump all the way to 20 years. 20 years you've been teaching in the teaching field. Okay, there are a few of you, not as many, but there are a few of you. If I were to add up all your collective, I'm still looking. Okay, if I were to add it, you can put your hands down. If I were to add up your collective years, you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of collective experience, which is pretty amazing. So if you're watching this, you have a very rich, diverse amount of experience. Now, as you know, the strength of those that have been in 10 and 20 years is that their experience is rich with illustrations of what has worked and what has not worked. The weakness of those who have been in for 10 or 20 years is that perhaps, I'm not saying you, but that perhaps you have gotten very stoic in your approach. I'm not saying that's the case, but that's the temptation. The joy and benefit of a brand new teacher, 1, 2, 3 years in the profession, is that they bring so many new cool ideas to the profession, that those who've been in it for 10 or 20 years can learn a lot about new approaches, about how to really teach the young people of today. And that's what I learned from my teachers at Elevate. I was with all of them this morning, early this morning. That's what I learned from them. And what they learned from me is, I hope, wisdom and how not to make the same mistakes I made. So we see the juxtaposition of how many years and how we can use our strengths and perhaps our weaknesses to help each other out. That's what's powerful about a large staff, a large teaching staff that I seem to be looking at. So what I'm going to ask you to do, you circle the important words in leadership. You can scroll through the faces as well. I don't have to be the only one that scrolls. I'm going to ask you, without naming names, I'm going to ask you to write down an adjective, because you notice that your definition of leadership, very few nouns were there. It was mostly descriptive words like adjectives or adverbs. Look back on your definition and you'll notice that. You didn't define leadership as leader, because that's circular reasoning. You defined it with something richer than that. And those words are incredibly important because we want to raise the next generation of children to be adjectives, not just nouns. And what you are working on as a teacher is to make sure that when a child is asked the question, what do you want to be someday? That they don't simply answer it by saying, I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, an actor, an athlete, a teacher. That's a noun. But they start to say, I want to be dependable, reliable, trustworthy, honorable, an adjective or an adverb. Because then if you attach all of those to the nouns, it becomes an incredibly worthwhile life to live. That's what you're doing as a teacher. You guys as teachers are teaching the next generation how to live in the future. You're teaching the next generation for jobs that don't even exist. You don't even know their definitions or job descriptions now, neither do the students. Most people are in a profession that provides the now. They build a car, you buy it now. They build a computer, you buy it now. They build a phone, you buy it now. But you guys are teaching young people to work with tools and instruments that have not even been invented, but they will someday. For the doctor field, for every field that's out there, they will be there someday, and you will have had a huge influence in their life. So what I'm going to ask you to do now, you have your pen and paper still, is look around the room, if I can call it that. Look around and see if you know, you do, you know some of these other teachers, and think of an adjective that describes them. An adjective is not a long sentence. It's not a paragraph, it's a word. Think of an adjective that describes one of the other teachers in this room. Go ahead. And write it down. Write that adjective down. If you want to write the name of the person down, that's fine as well. It shouldn't take a long time. You may have to scroll through and go, there's Alice. Okay, you got that word? Okay, I'm going to try to listen again. Unmute and give me that word, not the name of the person, but just that adjective or adverb. Go ahead.
Committed.
Cheerful.
Fantastic.
Get it.
Ambitious.
Thorough.
Committed. That is very correct. That was really cool. Thanks. There was a little garbled in there, but thank you very much. Now I'm going to ask you to do something else out right now. After it's over, go tell that person that's what you thought. I need it. Go tell that person that's what you thought. Now, going all the way back to the beginning of our time together. You all raised your hand when you said you had kids and you loved them. I didn't have you raise your hand, but I saw a lot of head shake when I said, do you love the kids you're working with? I said, yes. Have you told them? Have you literally told your kids that you love them? And I see some head shaking. They need to hear it. Those of you who are married, you know how important this is. When you say to your spouse, but I do love you, and they say, but I never hear it. You know, and I'm saying it because that's been my fault, my life. So people need to hear what we feel about them. Why? Because we're more apt to talk about people. I don't mean in a bad way, well, in a bad way too, but we are more apt to talk about people than we are to people. In other words, I just asked you to do an adjective, think of an adjective of one of your colleagues. Tell them you did that today. Call up Audrey, call up Brittany, call up Rutledge, call up different people, whoever it is, or text them and say, it was you I thought about, and this was the adjective I thought about, and you will clearly make their day. And start making that perhaps a habit, a once-a-month habit where you think of something like that. I was thinking of you today, because your profession is a really tough one to continue on and on and on year after year. I meet so many people out in the business world that were at one time teachers that just couldn't take it, and they've left the profession. You know some too, and perhaps there's some here that are listening that are thinking of doing the same thing. I hope you won't, not especially if you're a wonderful career teacher. But let me get into now our work. Now, all of you are gainfully employed. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on this call. You're all teachers. You're all receiving a paycheck. You're all asked to do something with kids in a classroom. So you're all gainfully employed. I don't know how many of you are happily married. That's not what I'm going to get into. But wouldn't it be cool if we could reverse those words and say, I want to be gainfully married, and that's another subject, and happily employed. I have to spend 100,000 hours of my life at work. I want to enjoy it, not just endure it. I really want to enjoy it. With all the stuff going on in the world, with the requirements of the teaching profession, with the testing of the teaching profession, with all the forms I have to fill out, with all the disgruntled parents, and with all this and all that, I still want to love on these kids. And that has to be your core calling. The rest is just necessary evils. So let's talk for a minute about our work. This is called our work, our kids, and ourselves. Our work is rough work, tough work, with tough kids. So I'm not going to say it isn't. It doesn't matter if they're from homes of poverty, which we'll get into in a minute. This is rough and tough work with tough kids. This is just a tough world for people to live in. So I want to begin this with a great question. What is the secret of a good education? Now don't unmute. I wish we were together. We would do an exercise called Epic Educational Questions where you would actually write them and I would get them. But we can't do that with Zoom. I know we got the chat feature, but what is the secret of a good education? I'm going to answer it real quickly. First of all, it's the wrong question. We should be asking, what is the secret of a great education? You didn't go into this profession to provide a good education. You went into it to provide a great education, an excellent education. So now let's reword it. What is the secret of an excellent education? And I'm going to say this, it is not a secret. It is not a secret. William Glaser, the famous psychologist, wrote 2 books. The Quality Teacher, psychologist, wrote the book, The Quality Teacher and a Quality School. And he made this remark one time. I heard him speak up in Rhode Island. He said, quality is hard to define, but you know it when you see it. Quality is hard to define, but you know it when you see it. There's just something very soulish about that quality known as quality. And that's different than qualified. You all had to get through the interview door by being a qualified candidate. But the question is not whether you're qualified. The question is, are each and every one of us a quality person? Because we want to put quality people in front of quality children, because that's what we ought to believe about them, even though it's rough and tough work, quality children in order to get a quality result. You can't do it any less than that. You have to believe right about the kids. You have to believe right about yourself in order to get the right result. Anywhere in that equation, if it gets thrown off, will not get the intended result at all. So yes, this is a really tough kind of profession and calling that you have. So let me deal real quickly with poverty and parents and see if this makes sense to you and see if it helps enlighten a little bit. First of all, poverty is not our worst enemy. Poverty is not our worst enemy. Some think it is. Let me give you a little data point here. Back in the first recession, in 08 and 13, it's not the first recession in our nation, but it's the first recession in recent history. From 08 to 13, the poverty rate was going up. Even areas like Mandarin went from 17% free and reduced lunch rate up to 40%. The upper end of the poverty rate, those Title I schools, some of them went from like 91% to 98% free and reduced lunch rate. And you're aware of this, but did you also realize that during those same years, the graduation rate went up? Didn't go down. It didn't even level off. In fact, the graduation rate is up over 86% now. So when those nonprofits come along and exaggerate their resume and they say, well, you know, the graduation rate's only 60%. That's not true. I held a national brochure this morning that had that statistic in it. That's untrue. Where every state, the whole nation is up over 80% now. So all that to say this: if poverty is not our worst enemy, what is it? What is our worst enemy? I don't know how many of you saw Adam Sandler's movie about the hockey player. Do you remember that? What was that called? It's slipping my mind. But he was a
Happy Gilmore.
What's that?
Happy Gilmore.
Yes, Happy Gilmore. Well, he was a hockey player and he had to learn how to play golf in order to save, and he had to win a golf tournament in order to save. It was really a funny movie, in order to save his grandmother's house. I mean, he's really good. I mean, Adam Sandler is that. But anyhow, Happy Gilmore had to learn golf, but he was a hockey player. So he held the hockey stick. I think you can see my hands there. He held the hockey stick like we hold a baseball bat or a hockey stick. But when you learn golf, for those of you who are golfers, they tell you to take your fingers and interlock them like this. It is the most unusual thing. Yeah, there it is. Brittany's doing it. It is the most unusual thing to do when you first do it. If you have ever played golf for a long time and you then try to hold the golf club like a baseball bat, now that feels really weird. And why is that? Because you learned golf that if you practice the uncomfortable long enough, it will become comfortable. If you practice the unnatural long enough, it will become natural, so that if you went back to the old way, that now feels uncomfortable and unnatural. How do I apply that to where we are in the field of education? If we believe that the whole thing is all about poverty, there's enough money to hand checks out to people. That isn't going to change anything. In fact, when we deal with the parents of many of our students, you realize they have been practicing muscle memory, that's what they call it, muscle memory for such a long time. Your kids have not, the students have not yet. They have been practicing their muscle memory so long, you wonder why they won't change during a parent-teacher conference? You wonder why? Don't wonder anymore. Muscle memory. They've been practicing unhealthy habits, unhealthy parenting practices for so long that to do anything else would feel unnatural and uncomfortable. But not the kids yet. They're not old enough yet. You have a huge ability to make a massive positive difference in their life concerning muscle memory. How do we do that? I believe as teachers, you should help the troubled kids. They say 20% of the kids cause 80% of the troubles. 20% of the kids out of a class of 20 kids, that's 4 of the kids. So when you go home at night and you go, oh my gosh, I had an awful day. It was probably only caused by 4 kids. Think of those kids. And think about the muscle memory you would like changed. Think about a new interlocking of the fingers, so to speak. Think about some behavior, some thought process and say, I wish this kid would just think about it, list it down, make a list. I'm not joking, make a list and say to yourself, I'm gonna work with this kid and we're gonna practice the uncomfortable until it becomes comfortable. Because if this kid learns new muscle memory, it is gonna make a radical difference for the rest of their life. And ladies and gentlemen, you will be the teacher they remember. You'll be it. When I speak in any kind of a conference, I always ask the crowd, how many of you can remember one teacher that made a massive difference in your life, good or bad? And then I say, okay, good. And almost every hand goes up. And I said, by name, do you know that person? Yes. And I asked them to do the same thing I just asked you. If that person is still alive, tell them that they made a big difference in your life. Tell them that. And then I asked the crowd, can you remember 12 teachers, 1 per year? 13 if you count kindergarten. Can you remember 13? All the hands go down. They can't. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, in this profession of teacher, why can't we remember 12 people? Just 12. Now, I bet you in your crowd, in this crowd right here, you probably can remember a lot of your teachers. Maybe not all 12, but because you're more mindful of that issue. But in the business world, that's not the case. For some reason, even though you taught them, every successful business person was taught by someone such as yourself, it didn't make a big difference with a lot of them. They did a survey of dropouts. This was pretty revealing to me, of dropouts, kids that had not completed high school, And they asked the kids, amongst other questions, because as you know with surveys, you try to hide the real question amongst other questions, so they don't think that's the only question being asked. Anyhow, one of the questions was, can you name somebody who has a college degree? 85% of the dropouts could not name anybody that had a college degree. 85% of the dropouts. Now, your first reaction is, well, of course, they're dropouts. I mean, they're probably their parents dropped out. They didn't have a college degree. Their friends don't have a, and you start thinking about the circle of friends in the neighborhood they come from, and you go, yeah, that makes sense. No, it doesn't make sense, because they were in school. They were in school for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And every one of their teachers, I'm going to guess, had a college degree, but they didn't think of them when they thought of somebody in their life that had a college degree. That's a sad testimony of what's happening in our profession, that each one of us needs to live up to the high calling that we will be that teacher. That when a guy like me stands in front of a group and says, can you remember Miss Allers? She's the one that I remember. I'll tell you about her later. Can you remember Miss Allers? Yes, I remember Miss Allers, but I don't remember 12. I remember Miss Schmalzried too. Second grade, she used to hang a tongue, tape, Scotch tape, hang a tongue on us kids that talk too much in class to remind us to keep our mouths shut. She had a special one for me. I had to sit on a stool and mine went from my chin all the way down to the floor. That was awful. And she was wrong. Because guess what I do today? I talk and talk and talk. She was wrong. She should have built on that gift, not tried to squelch it. So I remember her too, but I remember Miss Allers, which I'll tell you about in a little while because I wanted to marry her. So anyhow, I'll stop with this idea. List those things down that you want to see in these kids, because it's not too late for them to learn muscle memory, to actually create brand spanking new habits. And it goes far further than the math, science, social studies, and English that you all are teaching, or any of the electives that you're teaching as well. Let's talk for a few minutes about our kids, the kids that we deal with, or the children, or the students that we deal with. And I'll begin with a couple questions. What does a child expect when they go to a doctor's office? Well, they might expect to get hurt if they're going to get a shot. What does a child expect when they go to Disney versus their doctor? Probably to have a great day, enjoyable day. Now, if you've been to Disney with your kids, the day starts out great. And from a parent's side, it sometimes isn't all that great, because the kids get whiny and hungry and, sometimes go, I paid this much for today. But from the kids' perspective, they had greater time than you think they do. And by the way, surveys have shown that too, that kids really don't remember their bad behavior at an amusement park, but they have it. But anyhow, what do kids expect when they go to the doctor, when they go to Disney, when they go to a dentist? Now, when they go to a dentist, they almost always expect to be hurt. Almost always, they expect something to not feel good when they go to a dentist. They don't want to go. You don't want to go as a mom or a dad. What do they expect when they go to a movie? What do they expect when they go to church? What do they expect when they play a video game? What do they expect when they go to school? What do they expect when they walk into your classroom? Now let's reverse it. What do you expect when you go to school? What do you expect when do you go into your classroom? And I hope it is with enthusiasm and new believer fever, and the kids can feel it every single day. The definition of a successful person is that every once in a while, they have a bad day. That's true. All of us, every once in a while, we have a bad day. The definition of an unsuccessful person is every once in a while, they have a good day. But most days are bad. Successful teachers, that's true. Unsuccessful teachers, that's true. Successful kids and students, that's true. Every once in a while, they're going to have a bad day, but unsuccessful ones are living a life of failure, and success is a parenthesis. It's not a lifestyle. And so we as teachers have to be that example in front of the children that we're dealing with. Dartmouth Medical School, I have it right here. I'm going to read this to you because I couldn't memorize it. They did a study commissioned by the National YMCA a number of years ago, and it's called Hardwired to Connect. It said, this is a medical school, by the way, not the College of Social Science or their education school. Dartmouth Medical School says, this is a quote, "What's causing the crisis in American childhood is a lack of connectedness. We mean two kinds of connectedness. Close connections to other people." Come on, teachers, you know this is true. They are not preaching to an audience, you guys, that don't understand this. Close connections to other people and deep connections to moral and spiritual meaning. Wow, this is not a church service. This is Dartmouth Medical School. Dartmouth Medical School, quote, "Scientific evidence, largely from the field of neuroscience, which concerns our basic biology and how our brains develop, shows us that the human child is hardwired to connect. We crave social interaction." For those of you who are old enough to remember the VHSs, you remember VHS and the VHS machines? They were big, thick tapes, and you put it in, you watched your movie. When they invented the VHS, they were sure that the movie houses were going to go out of business. They were sure that those places that seated 400 people to watch on a huge screen were going to go out of business. So surround sound came into our homes. Large screen televisions came into our homes. This was going to greatly alter the music industry. It didn't. It didn't. And everybody thought it was going to. All the social scientists said this is going to greatly alter how we're entertained. And why is that? Because you may have even found yourself saying, that movie I need to see in a crowd on a big screen. There's something about being with other people at football games, at baseball games, at high school games, in the movies. We crave social interaction. So do the kids. You know that. Well, when you become one of those significant people in their lives, it will greatly alter their whole life. Dartmouth Medical School goes on. The human brain appears to be organized to ask ultimate questions and seek ultimate answers. Wow. We are impressed by mounting scientific evidence suggesting that in two basic ways, the human child is hardwired to connect. First, we are hardwired to connect to other people. They already said this. They repeated it about 6 times. We are hardwired to connect to other people. Second, we are hardwired to connect to moral meaning and the possibility of the transcendent. Meeting these basic needs for connectedness is essential to health and to human flourishing. No, they were not suggesting a denomination or a religion. They were suggesting that even in the field of education, there should be this conversation, not necessarily proselytizing, of not just connectedness to the humans, but connectedness to the transcendent. I believe that common sense tells us that if we sacrifice meaningful relationships on the altar of academic achievement, let me repeat that again. If we sacrifice meaningful relationships on the altar of academic achievement, we will get neither one. We won't get human connectedness and we won't get academic achievement. Children will not rise to their potential if there's not a significant other person, you and me, in their life. Yes, they're parents, but you're one of them. They should remember 12, at least 12. We will get neither one. But if we emphasize both, human connectedness and academic achievement, we will get both. That's our kids. That is our kids. Now, to further illustrate what I mean is this. I have a basketball here. I really wish I was in front of you, but you see this basketball. I think you do. The video is crazy. I'm going to put it right in front of my face. There you go. When I was at Terry Parker, now I'm going to squeeze it. I don't know if the video is showing this. All right, I'm going to do something because I don't like the way it's showing. I'm going to get rid of my background. Hold on one second. The magic of Zoom. There it is. Now you see the basketball. I was at Terry Parker and I asked, there was 400 kids in the audience, and he asked me to conclude a large setting where there was a panel discussion, all the rest. So I got up there, I asked him for a basketball. It happened because somebody didn't show up and somebody came out and said, would you conclude this thing out? So I said, well, I'll have some fun with the kids. So I got up there and I said, get me a basketball, and they did. And I asked them to get me one of those inflatable pins, but not a pump. I didn't want a pump. I actually took air out of it. I wasn't putting air in it on purpose. The kids didn't know that, but that's what I did. And then I handed the basketball to a young man. And I said, you can spin this, right? He goes, yeah. So he spun it. And of course, it didn't have as much air as it should have, but he couldn't feel that at the time. And he spun it, and I gave illustrations of how the earth is a screaming testimony that we're on the move, whether we want to be or not. You know, at the equator, we're traveling, for those science buffs, we're traveling at 1,046 miles an hour at the equator. In Florida, we're traveling 740 miles an hour. Even if you're sitting, you're going 700, right now, you all are going 740 miles an hour. So if you go home tonight and say, I'm tired, and you can explain that you've been going 740 miles, I tell kids, go home and tell your parents you've been going 740 miles an hour and see if they use that as an excuse not to do your homework. And yeah, we're on and the earth is a screaming testimony that we're on the move whether we want to be or not. Even at the top, the North Pole and the South Pole, it may take 24 hours to spin, which is a testimony that some people are just spinning in circles and covering no ground. But then I asked that student to bounce the ball down. And so he threw the ball down, and if you were in here where I'm doing this video, it bounced down and stayed down. It didn't bounce back up because, as I had already told you, I let some air out. I said, pick it up. I said, push it down harder. They pushed it down harder. I said, what's the problem with this basketball? And this one has a dimple in it, but the one that he used didn't. And I said, what's the problem with it? And I asked all the kids, what's the problem with this thing? And of course, they got the right answer. You ready for this? It's depressed. Doesn't have enough pressure. I said, I'm not a doctor. I'm not recommending any of you go off the medicine that you've been told, but America gives 5 times the amount of methylphenidate that the whole rest of the world put together. We call that Ritalin. Now, it doesn't mean some kids don't need medication, but I'm convinced not as many need it as we give it. That some of it has to do with classroom management. Some of it has to do with parenting management. And these kids will rise because this basketball, like children, are meant to bounce back up. That when they are pushed down, they bounce back up. And I yelled out at Terry Park, I said, and when you are pushed down harder, you bounce back. And they all yelled out, higher. So that's what you were created to be. This I was not taught in my master's degrees, nor in my doctoral work. I wasn't taught this, but I believe it. And I think our young people have taught us the power of grit and resiliency. They have taught us this. And guys, I'm going to ask you guys a couple questions. When you think of yourself included, you have been taught that too. You have gone through tough times. And if you haven't lived long enough. You're going to, but you have too. And sometimes in sharing with the children how you have had to learn how to bounce back, you want to give them those tools. And I'm going to suggest a few, but I bet you I'm probably not teaching you anything. Number one, if you were sitting with me alone at Mojo's Barbecue in Lakewood. I love that place. A few other good restaurants too, but I love that place. And you said, man, I'm just really down, Mr. Heymann. I would say, this too shall pass. Time. That's one suggestion. Most people don't like that one, but you know it's true. Number two suggestion you would give to kids, I call it advocacy and accountability. Hey, kid, who are you listening to? Who's really got your ear? So if you give another illustration of a basketball court, okay, follow me on this. There's a basketball game going on, and you are a player, and you just got fouled. Now, I'm speaking to high school students, so they caught it really well. I'm sure you will as a teacher. You just got fouled. You get to take 2 shots. You just got fouled. There's only 1 second left. 1 second left in the game, and you're down by 1 point. So your 2 shots will either, if you miss both shots, you will lose the game. If you get 1 shot, you will tie the game. If you get both shots, you will win the game, along with all the other points that your team got. Half the bleachers, including your mom, are cheering for your success. Half the bleachers are cheering for your failure. Learn that now, because that will be true the rest of your life. You will have people that will cheer for your success, and you will have people cheering for your failure. Accountability and advocacy. Who is advocating for you, kid? Who are you listening to? Who's got your ear? Who's bringing you down? Who's raising you up? Teachers, the same question. If we're resilient people and we're going to live resiliency in front of the children, the same question there. Because sometimes I have sat on my back porch, which is to my left, on my back porch with 4 teachers who had to be some of the gloomiest teachers I've ever met. And I happen to know them for a long time. So I played, well, they didn't know I was playing a game, but I said this to them. I said, how you guys doing? And one of them said, not bad under the circumstances. And I said, what are you doing under there? What are you doing under there? You were not built to be under the circumstances. You were built to be above them. And if this is what you're portraying in front of children, we've got trouble in your classroom. And I love these teachers. We had a lengthy conversation about the difference between enthusiasm and misery. Enthusiasm is contagious. Misery loves company. You're going to still have somebody surrounding you. Depends on what kind of person we are. Whether we surround ourselves with misery or we surround ourselves with enthusiasm. So just the same advice we would give to kids about how to be resilient, we need that same advice sometimes, even as adults. Who is in your life right now that when you are really down, and don't tell me you're up all the time. You're not up all the time. Who is that? Does that person live inside your house? Sometimes they don't. I get that. Sometimes it's a great friend that you can go and have a glass of wine with. But make sure it's not somebody that complains alongside of you and at the end of the evening, both of you are depressed. You want somebody that's going to lift up your spirits and lift up your heart because, again, you're in a divine calling. So deep connections to spiritual meaning, close connections to other people. And this will kill 2 things in your life. Kill 2 things in your life. One, it's called awfulizing. Oh my gosh, you know what happens all the time? When you find yourself saying all the time, that's called awfulizing in the field of psychology, okay? Because nothing happens all the time. So when somebody says everybody's doing it, you know, I remember meeting a drug dealer in Ocala. He was 17 years old, and I was asked by a friend of mine who's a therapist to come and meet him because he wanted me to motivate this young man. So I drive into the cul-de-sac in a Suzuki Samurai. Suzuki Samurai is a squished down Jeep, tin can on wheels. And he drives in a huge white limo. He wasn't driving. He gets out of the back seat with 2 young girls on both sides of him. He's 17 years old in a huge white suit. And I look at my friend and I look at him and say, you know what my reaction is? And this is what I said to the drug dealer. I said, jealousy. Jealousy. You have everything I would love to have right now. You just got it the wrong way. And then we did talk, but I wanted him to know I was jealous, and I was. That was my first reaction. Now, obviously, I don't want to live like him. I don't want to do drugs and all the rest. I get all that. But who was lifting him up? By the way, he died. He was from Palatka, Florida, and he was killed, which is what we talked about. You're either going to spend time in jail or eventually killed. And those two young ladies will be on the arm of somebody else when this is all over. How are we going to live our lives? You haven't selected that kind of lifestyle. I certainly haven't selected it, but some of our kids are. Our kids will work for somebody. You know that. For those of you who studied Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? 5 needs. We won't even tip the top one. Physiological needs, food, shelter, clothing, right? That's not your job. Doesn't mean you don't help kids out, but you know resources you can send kids to if they don't have food, shelter, and clothing. The next is safety. I hope your classroom is a safe place, and I hope your kids tell you that it's a safe place. That is a good thing that you are doing. The third level is your sweet spot. It's your Dartmouth Medical School. The third level is belonging and love, a sense of belonging and a sense of love. That's your sweet spot. Yeah, your career, you're supposed to teach a certain content, but your sweet spot is to capture kids there. Why? Because they're going to work for somebody. They're either going to be loved by you or they're going to get loved by a gang member, and they will love them to death. And you guys know that. You know what I'm talking about. I don't know if you've lost students yet. I've lost staff members to gangs when I headed up communities and schools. We don't have enough time to go into that. But this is rough work that you are doing. And I said it would kill 2 things. One, awfulizing, meaning everybody's doing it, or oh, this happens to me all the time. No, it doesn't. Not really. When you get proper perspective, you have somebody that you're accountable to, they'll say, that doesn't happen to you all the time. Come on. And the second is shoulding. They say we need to stop shoulding on ourselves. I hope you'll smile at that. I'm not cursing, but you'll get the point. It means stop saying they should, he should, we should, I should. Stop shoulding on yourself. Life is a calling that says, what today am I going to do different that's going to make a massive positive difference for the greatest number of children in the shortest period of time? That's what we've been called to do. So that's an explanation of our kids. Our kids are great to work with. I hope the kids that you work with are the greatest. My new venture, we're working at Rains and Ribault High School. We took the 2 toughest schools in the city on when we were recommended to go to other schools. I said, no, I want to hit the 2 toughest. For any of you know me, I've always done that, and I love doing that. Ladies and gentlemen, I was born in Athens, Greece. I'm not sure how many of you know my story. I don't know who my mom and dad are. I was put in an asylum. That asylum is still there in Athens. It's not called the Athens Children's Asylum now. It's an art gallery, but the actual building is still there and looks exactly like it did when I was a little boy and ran those awful hallways and got beat up pretty bad. When we got dumped off in a bread box, New York Times did a story called Bread Box Babies. A doctor would sign our death certificate. I didn't discover that until I actually visited that building a few years ago, that there was a doctor. Channel 12 News did a short documentary. If you want to look it up, you'll see the picture of the doctor and everything. Anyhow, he would sign our death certificate. Once our death certificate was signed, if anybody came back to claim us and said, look, I dropped the baby off 2 months ago, they'll say, oh, we're so sorry he died. Now, once you're dead, they can do anything with you they want. And if you have ever seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire, you know what I'm talking about, because that's what they did in that movie, and that's a true story in a documentary. Same thing what they did with us in Greece. Okay, difference is, as you can tell, I still have all my fingers. They didn't bust my knee up, and they didn't cut any of my toes or fingers off, which they do to children to make them look poor. If they look poor, tourists are more apt to give money and give more money than they would otherwise give. However, even back then at 5 years old, 4, 5, 6 years old, I obviously was good at raising money because nobody had to cut my fingers off. But I do remember getting abused and abused badly. Now, why do I say that to you? Perhaps that's a reason. You know, I talk to kids sometimes, how many of you have been sold into slavery? And of course, no hands go up. I still haven't had a hand go up. I said, I have. I have. And it's an awful thing to think about. And until the Heymans came into my life and adopted me and made a radical difference in my life, and then Miss Allers came into my life, that third grade teacher I was telling you, I couldn't read till third grade. And I often tell young people, it's never too late to learn to read, because all of you as teachers know the importance of reading. My wife is a reading teacher, and she's always doing the typical reading quote, you know, I'm here to teach you to love to read. Well, I don't love to read, and I'm her husband. I do not love to read. I still don't love to read, but I understand the necessity of it. And if that's as far as you can get with some students, the necessity of reading, you've done a great job. Because if you can't read anything, as you know. And so Miss Allers was the first one to teach me that. She's the one I remember as taking the time out. When I say I wanted to marry her, I was in love with her in third grade. She just was so sweet to me. She loved me. And other teachers did too. My seventh grade language arts teacher was also one, English teacher was a wonderful, wonderful teacher. Anyhow, so let's talk about the third, our work, our kids, and ourselves. Who are we as people? Let me start this last section with a question. Oh, it's 2 o'clock. And that is, what on earth are you doing on the earth? What on earth are you doing on the earth? And obviously I asked myself that question. I'm not going to get religious on you. I'm going to answer very simply that I think all of you would say, yeah, that is true. We're changing averages. That's what we're doing on the earth. Some of us might be rudders on an airplane or on a boat, which changes the average direction very fast. Some of us may be the trim tabs, which doesn't change it fast or radically, but it changes it. They say on the Titanic, had they adjusted the trim tabs just a little bit, the Titanic would not have sank. So yes, we all have a place in changing the average. In our home, when we walk in that room after work, do we bring the mood down or do we lift it up? When we walk in our classroom, do we bring the mood down or do we lift it up? We are changing averages. When I teach bus drivers, yes, I've done big work with bus drivers up in Darien, Georgia. I remember recently telling them, do you realize you have an average group of children for a half an hour, and you don't have to do lesson plans. You don't have to do any grading. You just have them for a half an hour. Make remarks about their body. Above the head, above the neck and below the knees, nothing in between. Make a remark about their hair, their tan, their new glasses. Make a remark about their socks, their polished shoes, and I guarantee you the next day they will comb their hair a little bit better. They will polish their shoes a little bit better. That's all you have to do, bus driver. You have such an effect on children from when they leave the house, they get on your bus, to the time the first teacher sees them. And often teachers are quick to blame parents for the down mood of some of the kids when actually it was the bus driver. And parents are quick to blame teachers when often it's that half-hour ride. That's the power of one person, the bus driver in their life. Guys, you know you have more influence over the children's lives than a bus driver does. You have power. You have power. So I would say to you, never lose your ability to laugh. Laughter has power. Have you ever been somewhere where people just start laughing and you kind of look around like, what are they laughing at? They have power over you. They got you to look. They got you to wonder what in the world was going on. Laugh, and laugh a lot. You say, well, there's not a lot to laugh at. Well, look at your paycheck. Sel's going to say, thanks a lot for saying that. There's a lot to laugh at. People say, man, there's lots of reasons not to smile, but none of them are good. Think of those reasons not to smile, but none of them are good. Every once in a while, something happens to us where we don't smile for a period of time in our life. Somebody passes away. I've had 2 from COVID. That's not a time to smile and giggle. I get that. But most of our life should be one where children want to be around us because we raise the mood of the classroom. We raise the mood of their whole life. Never lose your ability to recognize you have unbelievable power. Power. You know that word comes from the word dunamos. We get our Greek word we get our English word dynamite from it. You know what dynamite is, a stick of dynamite. You have a fuse on the end of it. If you put that out in a desert on a rock, and lit the fuse, it would make a very loud noise, but it wouldn't perform its task. We use dynamite to move something. We stick it in a hole because we have to have resistance around the stick of dynamite so that when it blows up, it moves that which surrounded it. Power is having pressure in your life and moving that which surrounds it. You have pressure. I bet you could tell me what your pressure points are. Perhaps it's at home. Perhaps it's at work. But if you have pressure, you have power. If you don't have pressure, you have no power. And if you want to avoid all pressure, then say nothing, do nothing, be nothing. You won't have any pressure, but you'll have no power. You do have power as teachers, you know that. And so when you're putting it in a pressure cooker with some students, with parents, whatever, personal life or professional life, you have power. How do you handle that power? With self-discipline. As professionals, we have amazing power, and our words are very powerful in front of the students. If in a restaurant, people can sing happy birthday and get a restaurant of 200 people to sing along with them for a simple song like happy birthday, wow, words have power. I did that in Orlando. I was speaking at a conference and I got into the elevator with my boys, my own children. And we were going up to our room and I said, hey, there's somebody in this elevator. I was testing something. There's somebody in this elevator that has a birthday, I'm sure. I'd like to sing happy birthday. Is that all right, everybody? And I started to sing in the elevator. Well, the next floor, everybody got out. So did my boys. They were so mad at me for doing that. And they were right. It was a test and it failed. Right words, right context works. There was a time to sing happy birthday, and there was a time not to sing happy birthday. I was in a classroom recently where a teacher, I'm not going to tell you what school or what grade, these were older kids, told a story of road rage. No, road rage that he committed on another car. Is there a time and place to tell that? Yeah, probably to your therapist, but not to students. Don't give them license. Right words at the right time is the power that lies in you as a teacher. And last along this, never lose your ability to wonder. Oscar Wilde says, wonder a lot because only the shallow know themselves fully. Every time I watch the Olympics, I think, how much faster can the human body run? But every time they break world records. And every time we wonder, isn't there a limit to speed, to running speed or jumping or height? I guess not. I always wonder about that. What is the limit? What about inventions? Every time you get in a car, you say, what are they going to think of next with these brand new cars? But they do. And we invent something else. Watch Shark Tank sometime and you'll know what I'm talking about. It's like, wow, the inventive, creative mind is amazing. And it does make me wonder. Sometimes I lay out at night and watch the stars and go, we really are dust on the earth, in the earth. We're really specks in this universe. And I wonder a lot about a lot of things like that. So with certainty, I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to come down to a conclusion. With certainty, perhaps is the weakest word in the English language, or at least one of them. We go into grandma's house for Thanksgiving, Mom? Perhaps. Can you want to play basketball after dinner, Dad? Perhaps. That's okay. But when you get on a jet or a plane to fly somewhere and you say to the pilot, you do have proper training for this, don't you? You don't want the pilot to say, well, perhaps. If you go under the surgeon's knife before they put you under with anesthesia, you look up at the surgeon and you say, you really are good at this, right? You don't want to hear, perhaps. That there is a commercial that shows that. It's really kind of silly. And when a young person proposes to their future spouse, will you marry me? They don't want to hear, perhaps. There are sometimes we want a very, very certain answer. And teachers have to be people of certainty. We need to do the real, and I'm going to read some of these thoughts. With certainty, we need to do the real work with real kids, real tough work. We need to give all kids a level playing field. We need to give all kids equal access to success, not equal outcome, You can't guarantee that, but you need to guarantee equal access. With certainty, we need to give all kids to help them discover their talents, develop their skills, and also discipline their drives, their motivation. With certainty, we need to smile a lot. We need to smile a lot. With certainty, we need to remember that a child cannot be what they cannot see. They cannot be what they cannot see. And with certainty, we need to answer the question, what on earth are we doing on the earth? I can remember Miss Allers as my teacher. You can remember a teacher. Let us live our lives such that when somebody thinks of that great teacher in their life, you are it. Thank you very much. Do we have time for any questions or answers? Was that on your agenda?
I think it's, if some teachers want to stay and ask any
Okay.
questions, they're totally welcome to.
Okay, good, good. Thank you, everybody. Pleasure.
Thank you.
John, personally, I want to say thank you, and I personally enjoy a lot. Thank you being here,
Thank you, Sal.
and your friendship is so valuable to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other question? Just unmute yourself.
I see lots of thank yous in the chat.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's your best advice for a first-year teacher?
Are you Kenzie?
Yes, sir. I'm the art teacher at the Mandarin Elementary campus.
Oh, very cool. I pass that every single day going up to Rains. What is my advice? A first-year teacher?
Yes, sir.
The first two are the worst two, meaning the first 2 years are the worst 2 years. So you are in one of your worst 2 years. So you're going to have to grind it out. And I really mean that. You're going to have to grind it out. Every time you reach an issue, usually, if I'm not mistaken, it's going to be with a parent and or a child. Or it's going to, sometimes you can take care of a child issue if the parent is on your side. So I'm going to encourage you to remind parents that you are on their team, not on their back. That's really good. Sometimes you have to use those verbal terms. Mom, Dad, I'm on your kid's team, not on their back. Secondly, I will believe half of what your kids tell me about you if you believe half of what your kids tell you about me as their teacher. That's one piece of advice. Another is, and I think I said it toward the beginning, tell the kids you love to teach, that you love to teach. Did you say art? Okay, that you love to teach what you teach. First of all, you love to teach, that you love to teach what you teach, and you love them. Not just teaching them, you love them. Now someone will say, you hardly even know me. That's okay. You go to a rock concert, the rock guy up there tells me that he loves me and everybody cheers. So, and they don't even know my name and everybody cheers, oh, they love me. No, they don't even know your name. I know your name. So I'm going to begin with your name and I do love you. And they need to hear those words. So if you had a more specific question, I would certainly answer that, but that would be my advice.
Thank you so much for that. It was a really great talk.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Kenzie. By the way, if you guys ever do use Harry Wong's stuff on classroom management, that's good stuff too. Even though it's old, it's pretty good stuff. You know, it's free now. You can see it on YouTube. You don't even have to pay for it if you're having classroom management issues. Because his whole theme is do not yell in the classroom because you lose your power. Anybody else?
Just thank you so much.
Thank you, Angela.